Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and I hope you're ready for a bunch of metrics. I know I'm not.
You better get ready because metrics are going to be the things that govern your life from now on. For example, a perfect example of metrics, Josh from our team just spent the day flying to SeaTac. That's the Seattle-Tacoma, Washington airport. And as he's at SeaTac, of course, a big thing is online metrics for airplanes is a big thing. So airlines are only effective because of metrics. And so that's an example of megametrics in use. Just for the record, Joshua he arrived today, they're prepping the boat tomorrow, and then the next day they are starting the 70-48 race up the Puget Sound. That's 70 miles in 48 hours with only human power. It will be fun, I'm sure.
If you can't tell, it doesn't appear that that's your definition of fun, but that's all right.
I think it's awesome. I think I'd just be completely sick. So I think it's great. Okay, Austin, what do we need to talk about first today?
Well, first off, we're going to talk about metrics. Specifically, we're going to start off with establishing specific and achievable targets towards our financial metrics.
Okay, and we've talked about this just a little bit during the week. The fact that these are really the financial metrics here. And you can see that ultimately we need to get up to this 137K revenue target, but that all these other things like average order value and repeat purchase rate, all these things in red are the things that we're trying to manipulate to get there. Those are the actionable metrics. But what we have been focused on this week is breaking that down then. If we need this many unique web visitors per month, and we're going to distribute them across these different channels, then we need that much traffic coming from each one of them every month. And so then we get into what is the click-through rate for each of those, and based on the click-through rate, that backs us into how many impressions we need, and then by knowing how many impressions we need, we can start to now get to our hustle numbers, which are, what do we need to, how many ad purchases do we need to make on Facebook or YouTube, and so forth and so on. And so we'll get to the hustle metrics as part of next week. But having gone this far, we have really defined the target metrics, we've established the metrics, and so now it's just putting the focus on orient them around the results and the activities we need to do, and then, it's the results-oriented and time-bound piece. So those are the two things that we need to do to get finished here. So, which is actually wasn't part of the objective we had, so that will be something we'll move forward on coming up. Okay, so that's all I've got on metrics. Austin, I should be clear. That's all I've got on financial metrics. They're coming together. I'm sorry they're not more presentable. They're kind of hard to process, and I just want to note that our social media manager in training, we'll call her our social media management intern, has been busy chatting with us online, and isn't confident how great she'd be as a social media manager, but everything can be learned and we can get better, and there's lots of chats there, so hopefully we can blow this thing up and have to hire a social media manager sooner than later. That'd be fun. Okay, Austin, other metrics here we have to talk about, and this was one that we really had no idea how we were going to handle going into it a week ago. But as we came through this week, I think we've learned some good things, and that is about how we measure our progress toward and know when we've achieved our aspirational identity. And before Austin gets into that, I just want to remind you of a couple of things. First of all, this is the narrative goal we had associated with our aspirational identity. We want to prove that we have the grit to build a family-friendly business by learning, practicing, and teaching skills related to business, leadership, management, media production, design, development, and personal effectiveness. And in addition to that, we had also identified some aspirational identity, these guys, that from an archetype were creator first and then augmented by sage and magician. And so we've tried to figure out how do we measure all of that and blend that together and put metrics to help us know whether we are moving towards our aspirational identity. Austin, do you want to talk to what we've got so far?
Yep, let's start it off. So, I'll be straight with you. It took the brain power of both me and Dad to start coming up with these metrics, because I don't think either of us alone could get it together.
Collaboration is the key, along with a few bits of blood, some sweat, and a lot of tears.
Yes, definitely a lot of tears. He scares me. Just kidding. Looking at this is what we call a radar graph,
Also known as a spider chart,
also known as a spider chart.
except that it hasn't been filled in. It's just the basis for one.
Basically what we're doing with this graph is we're trying to point out where our goals are. And as you can see, there are kind of 3 big goals, but they're separated out within a bunch of smaller circles. So to start off with, we've got our level 1 through level 3. These levels, we're making no revenue, and currently we don't have any videos or any courses produced, and thus we're mostly focused on learning and developing the skills so that we can produce those videos. At level 4, we focus our time on creating our first course, and then over the next few levels, we start to develop and build our ability to build those courses. One thing that I would like to note is we aren't entirely sure if we will be a level 10 in all things. In fact, I believe a level 7 or 8 is where we decided our goal was.
Yeah, level 8. We have no intent of being level 10. We have no intent of being the experts in anything. If this radial chart, a level 10 all the way at the edge, means you are the master of the universe of that topic, we're not going to be that person. We don't want to be. We want to provide just enough to empower people to succeed and progress, but not necessarily get into the hypothetical nitty-gritty stuff.
Mm-hmm. And if you go ahead and look along those levels, you'll notice they'll have hours next to it, and so we've just timed out and guesstimated how many hours it's going to take to, we made an educated guess, is what I should say, about how many hours it should take, and it lines up very well with our other metrics, so we are pretty sure that they are on point.
Yeah, and just to be clear here, this is really describing a 20-year journey for a crew of a half dozen or a dozen people going from 0 to hero. I think that's what we'll call line 8 from now on, is hero. Although I guess we should call it guide. Going from 0 to guide, I guess from hero to guide. So this is a 20-year journey going from hero to guide in 14 different subject areas. And if that sounds a little bit over the top, that's the way we do things. We start with big, gigantic visions so we never run out of energy or work to do. Well, we might run out of energy, but we never run out of work to motivate us. But just to be clear, Austin, we won't start generating, we don't need to have all of these flushed out to start generating revenue. We'll start just with brand development at a level 3 will be our revenue generating point. And I think the big thing that's important about this is when you look at our description of our personal goal for our brand. We want to be focused on these different areas: business, leadership, management, media, production, design, etc. And this helps us make sure that we are becoming that well-rounded organization that we're trying to do. Breadth first, not depth first. Anything else you want to add, Austin?
Um, the only other thing that I like to add is just clarification. The reason why our focus is depth first is because we want to.
Breadth first.
I meant breadth. I said depth. Breadth first is because we are more so focused on providing you with all the providing families with the tools they need to be able to succeed, as opposed to providing a business with this one task.
Yeah, focused on providing those who are starting out with the tools first and maturing along with them as they need more tools will produce more tools. Okay, awesome. Anything else you want to say?
Not for this one.
Okay, let's go then on to our next one. And this is, you'll remember that we had these archetypes. And what this is basically showing is when we are fully staffed, we will be all the way over here. And at that point, we anticipate that about 25% of our ongoing effort will be focused on learning new things and 15% on applying it, and really about 60% on teaching it in different ways, whether that's through courses or through master groups or whatever the case. 60% of our effort will be focused on producing that teaching and learning and training, and then providing the support and accountability stuff. And so this is 100% full scale. This is where we're at today, or maybe even less than this as we think about it. So we're at less than 10% of the journey, and we're way out of whack. But what this helps us do then, the purpose of this metric, is to help us make sure we're focused on balancing the different aspects of our archetype. And so the creator is really focused on learning and applying the things that they are doing, and then starting to share. They're creating something that's shareable from that experience, but perhaps not with a lot of organization and emphasis. And then as we move on, the sage really gets into the teaching. The sage is the majority of our teaching, and a wise approach to organizing and presenting information, but maybe not quite as effective, or the learning's effective, but where the magician comes in is enhancing that teaching, the last mile of that teaching improvement, by making sure that there's tools to help our friends, our fellow bootstrappers, effectively apply the lessons that they're learning and get real value out of them. And so that is kind of how that all fits together. And those are the two approaches we've decided to take to measuring our journey towards our aspirational identity. Again, a journey that we anticipate is decades in the making. Okay, Austin, I'm not exactly sure what we've got next to talk about. Actually, I do know, and you probably know too because you just took a look at it. You're up.
We're going to quickly talk about what a positioning statement is and about the learning I've done on it. He's probably going to correct me a couple of times, but for me, a positioning statement is taking a business and comparing it to the competitors in a way that puts that business in the best possible light.
I would like to say showing us, a business and all of its competitors in the competitive landscape they serve in, right?
Yep. It's kind of showing them where our niches within our competitors filled. And one thing to note is that as we look at it, we tend to try to measure it with two metrics, and we'll see on one side we'll have people who are better and people at this metric and people who are better at another metric, but the goal is to be for us to be the best overall in the metrics that we measure.
And really, it's not so much saying that we are the best of everybody out there.
Mm-hmm.
It's helping people to see this is our strengths and this is what makes us strong and differentiates us from everybody else. If we looked at those others, they would be stronger than us in other ways.
Yep.
And so we're just trying to help communicate to people through the positioning where we bring unique value so that we can align with the right audience. That's what it's really about.
Mm-hmm. Showing off what our strengths are.
Amen. Yeah, you might want to work on your strength a little bit, dude. You're getting kind of flabby. Okay, so with that in mind, I think the only other thing we had here was to talk about identifying a variety of competitors that we might use in our positioning system. And so these are some of the competitors. Here's that kind of that 14 different areas, or actually these are areas that are become the 14 areas. But so these are a variety of different customers that companies, businesses that we identified that we might compete with in different areas. Now, each of these businesses actually has more value than we do in these areas in different ways, and always will. But again, we want to understand how are we strong compared to this group, and so that we can focus on our area. So that's what that's about. And so with that in mind, wrong sheet. With that in mind, basically, we finished 4 of the 6 things that we had on our list this week and started a 5th. And so where that leaves us overall in our journey is that we have our SMART financial goals here. We've got those targets that we talked about. And so we will go ahead and hit a paste special values here. Control-Shift-V, remember that. Control-Shift-V makes all the difference. And then as far as the professional goals, owner transformation, I think we've got that one kind of here now as well. And so I'm sure it will grow and flesh out over time, but we have what we need to start that journey. And then moving forward from there, when it comes to naming, this is the one that's in progress as we started looking at different ways to put things together and rank them and compare them. So I don't know that we're even halfway done, so I'm just going to kind of do this a quarter of the way along the journey type statement here. And then we can call that positioning statement effort done there. And so I think that is everything that we had. And as we look at that, well, we're still at risk of going off track. So we aren't off track yet, but we're also not back on track. Austin, I don't know if we're closer than we were last week or not. I know that was your goal, was to get closer. And maybe we're a little bit closer, but not a whole bunch. What do you think?
I think we are a little bit, as we look at it, we're probably about a quarter of a project closer than we were.
Okay, so little bit of teeny baby steps then. So Austin, any thoughts on retrospective? So that's our review. Any thoughts on retrospective?
Well, I was concerned that we hadn't gotten any work in, but as I chatted with Father, he told me what he had done in the retrospective side of things, and that is that as we're going through and looking at he looked at a variety of different channels about making a, not necessarily live streaming, but YouTube channel, and we learned that we're reaching a point where we have to get serious as opposed to, what is the word I'm looking for? as opposed to just posting videos. We need to work on getting serious about them and making them quality videos.
Well, I think we need to decide, one, whether we want to continue this relationship. We've been dating now for a little while, and it's time to decide whether we want to get serious and declare this a legitimate relationship, or just walk away. And so that's the first thing we got to do. I take votes in the chat whether we should keep going with this or whether we should retire while we're ahead. But I'm afraid I already know the answer. So, but if you want to tell us whether we should keep going or abandon ship, feel free. We'd love to hear any thoughts in the comments. The other thing is we needed to document. I think we did better documenting the stuff we did this week. It's not really well presented, and it's probably not organized very well, so we probably need to document, visualize, present, or organize. Document, organize, visualize. Something like that. So we should probably change that way of thinking. Instead of just document, make it document, organize, present, or document, organize, visualize. I don't know, one of those, something like that, so that we can keep everything together. Okay, that's all I got. We do have one piece of feedback. I'm good. If you have more to say, go for it. I've always been hard to shut up, I guess, so I guess there's always a lot to say. And it's interesting because we're just talking about branding, and we have over 35 different subject areas within branding. Marketing, probably another 60 or 70. In other words, there's a lot to be said. And I don't know that we have it all to say yet, but we're trying to figure out what to say, right?
Yep.
So document, visualize, organize, so that we can keep track of things. Okay, so Austin, before I wrap up, do you have anything else you want to add today?
Oops. Just a reminder to everybody that part of preparing your live stream is making sure all your cords aren't being kicked by your son.
Yes. Stop playing footsies with the technology, Austin. Okay. Well, on that note, a big shout out to Josh as he gets ready for the 7048. You got this, dude. We can't wait to maybe tomorrow or the next day we'll be able to show your progress live on screen. Where you started, where you're at, and how much more you've got to go. So that'll be exciting. Going from there, tomorrow morning, we have our sprint planning session. And typically we've been having those at 5:45. Austin, do we want to keep these at 5:45 at this point?
You're the one that has more. What's the word I'm looking for?
We will have our sprint planning tomorrow at 5:45, and part of our sprint planning may be adjusting our early morning times, at least for the summer, while nobody's going to school. So we'll talk about that and include that in our sprint planning tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, 5:45 a.m. Mountain Time. Be there or be square. Talk to you later.
See ya.